So, it seems these days that men want less responsibilities, while women want more opportunities, the same ones that have been afforded to men for thousands of years. Now, is that wrong, or should there be a paradigm shift at some point?
Mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. I think men with less responsibility only create a culture of boys. So indulging or condoning such behavior is completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. But unfortunately, there's a worse situation that involves women. And it's the women who want that sense of empowerment, but they end up falling into that trap of sex work. Okay, and let me tell you how this happens. Because what they don't realize is that the only power they have is the power they're being given. And the final outcome doesn't show them in the positions of strength. It ends up showing them as nothing but merely objects. Nothing more, nothing less. They just become objects. And the worst part is that many of these women don't even think beyond that moment. They never think about the future because majority of these women don't retire. Seriously, none of I mean, look, think about it. You still got women in the industry right now. There's women 40, 50, 60, been in it 20 plus years since the 90s, 70s. They're still working to this day. So now you have to carry this label for the rest of your lives, and your children who inevitably have to deal with it as well. They all have to deal with that. Y'all have to carry that label for the rest of y'all lives. But the question I have is, why not empower yourselves to be something better? Something greater. Become an engineer, a scientist, an entrepreneur. And for that, you're going to have the excuses of it's just easy money, whether they're just making it for ends meet, paying for school. But even that still don't hold water to me. And I'm sure Madison over here, Madison, love you. Okay, I love you. I don't think this is anything towards you. But Madison, women carry thousands of eggs in their ovaries, okay? Thousands of eggs. Okay, so the question becomes, if it's just about the money, it's not about the empowerment, it's just about the money, then why not donate some of your eggs and make a few $1,000s doing that instead of living with a label for the rest of your life?
Now, is it right to judge people for a decision they made regarding a perfectly legal profession?
Well, let me just say for the record, we all gotta eat, okay? We all gotta eat. And some of us have harder choices to make than others, but I still don't want to hear I definitely don't want to hear anyone trying to promote this type of behavior. I don't want men and women. I don't want anyone out there casting this as an honorable profession just because it's legal. Okay, just because it's legal, really. I mean, human sacrifices used to be legal too in ancient times, and see how that turned out. Okay, so basically, if you know better, then just do better. Okay, especially when children can pretend to be so many things: doctors, lawyers, first responders. You know, kids mirror what they see. Now, I want you to just sit there and think about little kids, for example, since I'm speaking on kids. Imagine little kids. I'm talking 3, 4, 5 years old, running around in the playground trying to pretend to be porn stars. Let me think, can you imagine that? Can you really imagine your little girl being surrounded by a bunch of tiny little male friends that she has at school, and she's depicting all the stuff she sees online, the stuff she sees on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, movies, stuff we see? Can you imagine her doing that? That right there is one of the biggest tests on whether what you're doing for the money is all right. If it's okay for small children to dream of being like you when they grow up. Think about that. Is it okay for children to dream like you when they grow up? Think about it. I mean, we've taken something that's incredibly intimate and we made it more impersonal. And it only goes to nurture false desires. That's all it does. And then it ends up dehumanizing the other sex, dehumanizing each other. Goes on and it just continues to go on. False desires, dehumanizing one another.
Yeah, but shouldn't women be allowed to make that decision for themselves? Shouldn't they be afforded equality and equity?
Equality, yes. Equity, no. No, no. I remember being with some friends back in college and trying to think, what was we talking? What was happening in college? Oh, I remember completely. No, lost my train of thought. I didn't got old now. I'm so old now, I feel. But anyway, I remember back in college I had some friends and we were hearing this woman who was online and she was talking about how she would like to get blackout drunk without being raped. And then one of the guys there, without just off bat, without missing a beat, he said, "Well, in that case, I should be able to walk down a dark alley with money in my pocket, just out and not get robbed." You know what I mean? And of course, his girlfriend ended up staring a hole right through him, but because it was insensitive. I mean, it, even me now it's bringing it up, it's still insensitive. But I honestly went, and once he said that, I really got home and I started thinking. I really started thinking. I was like, what if a guy gets blackout drunk and he wakes up with no kidneys? I mean, is it wrong to ask what the person did to ensure their own safety? I mean, is it wrong? I mean, is it really wrong to ask what the person did? You know, is it wrong to ask what they did to be attacked? Because I'm sure a lot of guys have never assaulted women before, but not all men see them as human beings. Again, like we said, create objects. So the truth is that men desire women, but some look at women as nothing but objects. They look at them just like money or jewels, regardless of their background or education. It's some men who have seen how they behave and they've seen this, and it just shows them that they're objects, nothing more, nothing less.
And although it might be clear to some, Madison, would you touch on the implications of such a skewed male perspective?
Let me start by saying I find that story disturbing and your friend disgusting. But to answer the question, there's honestly a greater burden placed on women in this aspect, right? It's not right, it's not fair, but it is reality. And another reality is the number one factor for most crimes is opportunity. So even though I'll be getting backlash for this, I just want women out there to be safe and not create opportunities for themselves to be victims, like getting blackout drunk, right? But the biggest problem is that boys are growing up these days without really knowing how to properly treat girls. I mean, they grew up with pseudo alpha males as their role models who really objectify women, and they're taught that this type of behavior is acceptable. I mean, we have what sex ed classes, but no gender relation classes in high school courses, that would really discuss behaviors that, give vital statistics on sexual assaults and ask thought-provoking questions for our young men and women to really consider in regards to the opposite sex.
So, here is a possible solution. What if men stopped monopolizing power and gave women a real chance, and perhaps even the respect that they deserve? Is that reasonable? Or is that a bit too naive?
Well, let me ask you something. How often in the history of mankind do we see groups willingly give up power? In all recorded history, how many times can we actually say we've seen this happen? And I mean, here's the thing: women want men to change, but that doesn't really occur without a reason. And honestly, I don't think we've given men a good enough reason as of yet, right? It doesn't matter how logical or emotional the appeal is, the fact really remains our problems are not their problems, which is why we're not going to get the type of responses we're hoping for, at least not in the near future, right? In order for a dynamic to shift, men need to be faced with the same type of problems we face and be stirred to action. Otherwise, things are really going to just stay the same. Like, I mean, if you think about it, think about it like this: you have different minorities in people of color in this country who are suffering, and their counterparts are looking the other way because it's not their problem. They don't know what everyone else is going through, and they don't care because it's just not their problem. So until it becomes their problem, right, there's really no reason for us to expect anything meaningful to rise out of this, right? I mean, the same way you can, see a war zone on TV and switch the channel to a sitcom, right? That's honestly the argument is for guys, right? Until that war zone is right outside their front door, it will not matter. But personally, I think the solution to this whole thing should start at grade school level, right? We should start with boys and girls participating in programs and activities with really strong emphasis on self-confidence and self-respect, and really just between each other, right? Because here's my thing. Women with high levels of these attributes, they're not going to let guys walk all over them. And men with high levels of these attributes, they're not going to need to feel the need to prove themselves, right? Instead, they're honestly going to have this intrinsic sense of self-worth. And that's really what we're looking for. And I think that's really where the change can happen, right?
Wow. Well, Madison, Donovan, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an awesome discussion, and I look forward to a speech from my boyfriend tonight, although it'll definitely be worth it.
Oh, man. I'm sorry to hear that, but yeah, I did have a great time. I would love to do this again. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, listeners, and thank you for tuning in at home. I hope you enjoyed this topic. And if you did, I hope that you come back for further discussions. Until then, see you next time.